The Trap. What it is, how it works, and how we escape its illusions. Written and narrated by David Icke. Recorded at Iconic Studios, England in August 2022 by Christiana Van Wyk. Chapter 1. We are here to remember. Top of chapter quote by James Delingpole. David Icke is a visionary genius. Anyone who doesn't realize this at this late stage of the game is deluded, ignorant, or foolish. Who would have thought, amid the decades of ridicule and abuse, that those words would have been written one day by a respected, proper journalist about that nutter, David Icke? Very close to no one. I hope that my life experience has shown how important it is to speak your truth, whatever that may be, no matter what the actions and reactions of others. Humanity has been manipulated into a reality bubble through thousands of years of what we call time to see self and life in a myopia so small, so microscopic, that only the basic functions of survival constitute the perception of living. This is changing as ever more minds awaken from the trance, but it remains the case for great swathes of the human family. Therefore, anyone exposing, thinking, feeling, knowing beyond those walls of myopic perception is going to face ridicule, abuse, and dismissal from those who literally cannot compute or process the expanded sense of reality being communicated. We must speak our truth, nevertheless. We must. Without that unwavering determination to challenge the holding pattern of convention, nothing can change. Perception eddies continue to spin while the rest of the river, infinite possibility, flows by unseen and unacknowledged. I decided when my mind awakened in 1990 and then crashed open early the following year that I was going to speak my truth. No level of abuse was going to stop me. To put this in human terms, I'm a stubborn bastard. So stubborn, in fact, that like the keystone of an archway, the more pressure you apply, the stronger I get. This strength is not human, it is beyond human. I am not human. Neither are you. Human is the great illusion and the foundation of our mass servitude. We are not human. We are consciousness having a brief experience called human. Here lies the revelation that will set us free. I am living an amazing life. Amazing. And I would not change a day of it, the good, bad, or the bits in between. If I did, I would break the interconnectedness that has shown me so much on so many levels and in so many facets that have conjured the magic that has led me to where I am today. I love where I am today, so why would I want to change the incredible tapestry of experience that got me here? I would, however, like to change many of the things I have been made aware of in a life of extraordinary synchronicity. The question is, how? How did I know? Why are things that I said, which are most far out, increasingly being supported by mainstream scientists? After all, I left school at 15 to play professional football with no exam certificates. To the intellectual mind, that is a paradox. How could I know without a proper education. I could know because the world is not what people think it is, or more to the point, are told it is. The intellectual mind must be the servant of expanded states of consciousness. Instead, the intellect has long been the master and not the servant. When that happens, the cell door slams shut on wisdom, on knowing, and our world is the result. The Reveal, the next stage of human awareness, written and narrated by David Icke. Opening quotes. Those who are able to see beyond the shadows and lies of their culture will never be understood, let alone believed, by the masses. Plato. Today's mighty oak is just yesterday's nut that held its ground. David Icke, 1991. Icke is spelled E-I-K in Dutch and means oak. Is not this world an illusion? And yet it fools everybody. Angela Carter. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends, and you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Morpheus, The Matrix. Chapter 1, Mind Prison. Top of chapter quote. We are captives of our own identities, living in prisons of our own creation. Theodore Teabag Bagwell in Prison Break. What do we know for sure? I mean, really know. Not think we know we know. Well, next to nothing. We live in a world in which we are fed a constant stream of illusion, and our illusion-infested thoughts and emotions then manifest the illusory experience that we falsely believe to be real. We call this illusion human life. I mean, falsely believed to be real in the sense that we think we are experiencing reality as we perceive it to be, when we're not. What can we know for sure in such circumstances? Precious little. We can scan the illusion for patterns, as I've done for 35 years, and establish that it is an illusion. We can add to that step by step as more patterns emerge and begin to piece together why it's an illusion, what creates the illusion, and what is behind the illusion. We can be aware as we explore the illusion that it is an illusion and realize that even what we think we know can be illusory. British wartime Prime Minister Winston Churchill described Russia as, quote, a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma, end quote. The sentence would be far longer if he had been talking about reality. Maybe an illusory riddle wrapped in an illusory mystery inside an illusory enigma, which is perplexing, inexplicable, baffling, confusing, befuddling, bizarre, weird, odd, strange, peculiar, and bewildering. I could go on. But there is one thing that we do know that cannot be credibly questioned or denied. Whatever we think we know, there is always more to know, an infinity of more to know in our case. To understand the world and reality, we must constantly be aware of what we don't know. That means almost everything. Ancient Greek philosopher Socrates is famous for seeing this most basic truth. Among quotes attributed to him are, "To know is to know you know nothing. That is the meaning of true knowledge. The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. In knowing that you know nothing, that makes you the smartest of all. These words are most obviously correct, and this awareness has driven me and everything that I've done in the last 3.5 decades since my extraordinary awakening, which I describe in The Trap. Humility is the foundation of this. The humility of saying, I don't know, so what don't I know? This propels and inspires you to seek out what you don't know. There is never a point where you say, I've got it. You realize that this is the biggest illusion of all, and one that entraps vast swathes of humanity in a perceptual prison cell of, I know. Exploration is over once you believe that. Why should I explore what I don't know when I do know? American historian Daniel J. Boorstin said, quote, the greatest obstacle to discovery is not ignorance. It is the illusion of knowledge, end quote. Unwavering belief that cannot be questioned and the human need for certainty amid blatant uncertainty are the very keystones of religion, including the religion that we call science. They both seek certainty in an infinite reality of infinite possibility, infinite potential, infinite uncertainty. How is certainty even possible if perception dictates behavior and experience? The only certainty must be uncertainty, must be choice in its deepest sense. Uncertainty is the gift that brings new experience, and with new knowledge, awareness, and the potential for wisdom. We must make peace with it. Curiosity drives us to embrace uncertainty, to seek out the cutting edge and go beyond it. Cliff Morgan, the Welsh rugby legend, said to me when he was an executive at the BBC, David, never lose your sense of wonder. I never have. Lose your sense of wonder, and you lose your sense of life. My life suddenly became, as a result of this, a synchronistic journey from 1991 onwards, wow. in which I was just walking into information. I would meet people, I would come across documents, I would read certain books that dropped in my lap, and so on and so forth. It's like some force has been handing me puzzle pieces, and in an order, often, mostly in an order that makes them easiest to understand where they go. And when I used to do jigsaw puzzles a very long time ago, I always started out wanting to find all the straight bits and make the frame first. And symbolically, in terms of this work, that's understanding how a few can control the world. Because when you first hear that, you think that's impossible. There's too many people. But when you see how they do it, it's very, very possible. Anyway, and then you put more pieces in the puzzle as you come across. And as you know, when you're doing a jigsaw puzzle, the more pieces that go into place, the easier the later ones are. Because you can see what's appearing. There's fewer pieces to put in there anyway, and so it's gone on like that over 30 years. And wow. As they say, the pudding is in the eating and all that stuff. The question was, okay, you put these things together, and you say this is the plan, but okay, so is it? And that is something that can only be shown with the passage of events and the passage of time. And 30 years later, it's pretty obvious that there is what I've been talking about, a plan which is unfolding for the centralized factist nature. In the end, that which ultimately controls China is that which ultimately controls the United States. Come down the levels, and you'll meet levels that are competing or think they're competing. Mm-hmm. But actually, this other level is orchestrating all of it, because the plan is for an end to countries. You see, this what they're doing at the moment is destroying the United States very blatantly.
Very blatantly.
I mean, if you don't have borders, you don't have a country. And so they're seeking to destroy America very blatantly, but it's happening everywhere. And if you look at their plan over the years, it is to destroy countries. George Soros has a global organization called the Open Society Foundations. What it should be called, given the enormous amounts of money funds into these groups that are doing this, is the Open Borders Foundation. Because the idea is that there are no countries, because the plan is for a world body, a world government dictating to everybody on the planet, and therefore there would be administrative units, but they wouldn't be countries and nations as we know them now.
Right.
So this whole competition between nations is being phased out anyway for this world centrally controlled fascist state, which will centrally dictate and control this smart grid. So as I was saying, if you can control AI from the central point, and that AI is connected to the human brain, dictating human perception, you literally create a hive mind where people all think the same and all act the same. And if you look at this whole COVID era, well, countries compete, right? Well, on some levels they do, at least on the face of it. Well, they've not competed for how to respond to this, have they? Mm-hmm. They've done what the World Health Organization basically centrally directed. Because, what's the chances of something happening, whatever it is, and virtually every country in the world responding in the same way?
Yeah.
It's obviously centrally coordinated. And, I've been writing for years about this global cult, as I call it, that's behind this. Forget borders and countries. They're for public consumption. There are no borders. This cult is as much in control of America as it's in control of China. The Mao Revolution in China was orchestrated by this cult for a specific reason, which is now playing out. And that is, they wanted a closed country that did not have to pay any lip service to democracy, freedom, or public opinion, which they could use to rapidly develop a system, not least through technology, of mass human control. And the idea was then, once that had been perfected and incubated, to play it out across the world. So we've had this so-called virus coming out of China. And what has happened in the West as a result of the last 18 months? It's become more and more like China in terms of control. And indeed, the Chinese reaction, the Chinese government reaction to, quote, COVID, which was supported very early on, this is the way to do it, by the World Health Organization, run by a complete crook, or officially headed by a complete crook called Tedros, who was appointed by Gates and worked for Gates organizations, funded organizations before he became Director General of the World Health Organization. They were pushing this, the China way, which was draconian lockdown, and people being taken from their homes and all this stuff. This is the way to deal with this, quote, pandemic, which they declared and changed the definition of pandemic, so it became a pandemic when it otherwise wouldn't have done.
Right.
And as a result of that, the rest of the world followed the Chinese response. That's where it came from. Like I say, at one level of the pyramid, you can have competition between America and China. But at this level of the pyramid, China and America are actually two.
It's probably super compartmentalized, so that the people that are competing don't even realize that there's another layer.
100%. That's how the whole thing works. Because the more people who know how the game works, the greater chance it is that it's going to come out. And I've talked to some people over the years who've been in the British cabinet. The cabinet of the government. and you have a chat with them, and they genuinely have no idea what's going on, not a clue, and they think they're making decisions and they're random.
Oh no!
When actually, it's all part of a global plan, and they are making decisions to support the global plan. And many of them, without even realizing there is one. You know, the ignorance in politics of what's going on is shocking. When I started to realize in the 1990s that the world was not controlled by the people we saw on public display, and I started to realize this was part of putting this the straight pieces, in the jigsaw puzzle. How do they do it? And I realized actually that you've mentioned the word before. There is a fiercely compartmentalized network in which the vast majority of people who are every day playing their part in pushing the world in this centralized fascist direction, Orwellian direction, have no idea what the force is that's actually driving it. They have no idea. They just get told what to do and they do it. And then they tell the people below them what to do and they do it. This is how it's all done. Without knowledge of why they're doing it and how what they're contributing to do it connects with other people in other areas of the world and other areas of the economy who are also contributing to push the world in this direction. And they don't know how it all fits together either. They just do their job and go home. And so when I saw that this network existed and how it worked, the question was, when did it start? And you start to go back to find the starting point, and it goes right back into the mists of history. But you can pick it up in Babylon, you can pick it up in ancient Egypt, you can chart it through the Roman Empire, because everywhere this cult has headquartered itself, there's been an empire, and then it moved up and massively centered itself in London, and that's when we had the British Empire, and then through those European empires. Massively the British Empire, but others too, the French and the German and the Dutch and the Belgian. This cult went global. This is how it went global. The colonial era was driven by this cult going global. And so people would say, yeah, but the colonial era ended. Well, yes, it did on the face of it, but not really.
No, not really.
There's two forms of control. One, really, unless you do it the way they want to do it through artificial intelligence, where you don't have the capacity to see what's going on anyway once that starts. But there's over control, and that's colonial rule. The people know who's controlling them. Maybe not from the shadows, but they know the forces that are directly controlling them. They're the colonial powers, and it may take a long time, but there's there'll be a rebellion against that eventually. Hopefully. But the covert control, where you think you see your rulers but you don't really, is much more powerful because people don't rebel against what they don't know exists. So at the end of the colonial era, after the cult had gone global, I mean, really global, especially like I say, the British Empire to Australia and New Zealand and Africa, South America, Central America, the United States as it became, Canada, everywhere. They apparently rolled back the colonial rule, but they didn't. Manipulations in the different countries mean that this cult is dictating the leaders, and it's dictating not only who wins, but who opposes. So they control the game. In Britain, we've got this moronic man called Boris Johnson, who's been prime minister.
He was like a cartoon character.
Oh, a complete moron, this guy. But a very sinister one, actually. He plays the fool, but he's a very dark man.
Oh, that's Bush style.
The opposition leader in Britain is a guy called Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, what's left of it. And not only have the Labour Party, through this whole COVID era, not opposed the fascism imposed by the Johnson government. They've said the fascism doesn't go far enough. So at any election in Britain now, and it's the same in almost every other country, the people voting have no choice.
Right.
There's no one to represent them. So the cult is running the show, and it's fusing country after country into one-party states as a stepping stone to the one-party world, which will be centrally controlled world government, which won't even in the end be elected. It will be a technocracy of appointed bureaucrats, scientists, technicians, etc. Things that are unfolding. I mean, every day I'm going through what's going on in the world. I'm taking something that over here, which seems to have nothing to do with over here, something else is happening that day, but they absolutely connect, because this agenda is long planned and global and centrally globally dictated. It plays out through apparently unconnected organizations, which at the if you go deep enough in the rabbit hole of all of them, they're actually all controlled by the same force.
Jesus, David.
So you have this plan for electric cars, and what happens, and it's been justified, not justified, but apparently justified by this human-caused climate change hoax, which has demonized the gas of life with the carbon dioxide, without which we'd all be dead. And suddenly, what you're seeing now is not just Tesla and Elon Musk, this cult frontman. It's Ford, and it's all these other car companies are bringing out electric cars at the same point, and they're talking about by 2040 there'll be no cars made that aren't electric. So and then you've got the laws against petrol cars and diesel cars, and of course what we're seeing is a transition in terms of fuel from petrol and diesel access to the electrical access in filling stations, gas stations. And as this moves on, if you've got a petrol car, you're going to find it more and more difficult to find a place to get fuel. We've at the moment had this in Britain, this fuel crisis, all manufactured, where people have not been able to get fuel with various things the government has done, but now hides from. And so people have been lining up, for hours sometimes to try and get fuel from a gas station. And the government's come out and said, which created it, and said, this just shows it's a good lesson that we have to get rid of fossil fuels and go to electric cars. So the whole thing is coordinated, and it's being generated, being promoted, this whole climate hoax, by people in the woke mentality who are utterly clueless about the world and the forces directing the world, to the point where they are demanding changes in society justified by what they claim are environmental requirements, needs. And they also perceive themselves to be anti-system and fighting the system to get justice for the planet, when what they're demanding is everything that this cult wants. This is why you've got Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum and Bill Gates, who've been pushing the COVID hoax. At the same time, they have produced books saying we need to use the COVID hoax, in my words, to change the world, to save the planet.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Those documents are very easily available.
So this is the whole point, that the COVID hoax and the climate hoax are actually different masks again on the same face, which is why the same characters are pushing both. Because if you look at the solutions to these apparent claimed problems, they're all the same. They're centralization of power and control of the fine detail of people's lives. Because so now they're more and more talking about the fact that we need climate lockdowns.
Yeah.
Right? So they're fundamentally connected.
But do you think at the root of this, at the source of all this, do you believe that it's a cult? Or do you think it's just about human power? Because I had this opportunity. I was just living in Peru for 6 months, and I got to live with these ayahuasca shamans, and they were making me do these ceremonies all the time. And it really changed my perception of the way, like, I believe that there are dimensional realities that we can tune into and gain access and power to these things. And I've heard other conspiracy people speak about this and say, like, maybe they are using different plants and occult methods to tune into these realities to gain powers and things like that. Do you think any of that is really going on, or do you think it's all about sort of just like the natural human urge to claim power over people?
Oh no, it's it is I mean, when people say to me, why would they do it? Well, I say to them, why does the psychopath do what they do?
Wow, I never thought of it like that.
Why does the psychopath serial kill? Yeah. Well, because he's a freaking psychopath. That's why he does it. And these people are psychopaths. They are super psychopaths. But even, I mean, you look at someone like Gates. He may be super rich, but he's still a gopher. You look at someone like Soros. He may be super rich, but he's still a gopher. Yeah. Look at the Silicon Valley people. They may be rich, but they're still gophers. But all these different people and organizations are ultimately controlled by a force you don't see. And what they just very quickly happens is when you front up various aspects of this cult agenda, you can become very, very rich, like Gates, like Soros, but it comes with a rider. And the rider is that great chunks of your wealth have to be channeled back into funding agendas that are part of this whole cult agenda. So, Soros makes enormous amounts of money, which is very easy to do when you know the stock market's going up and going down, because the people calling you are making it go up and down. It's very easy to become very, very wealthy. But that comes with a rider. So he has to fund this great swathe of organizations worldwide through the Open Society Foundations to as part of the deal. But so they're gophers. All these people are gophers to that which is in the shadows. But then you say, well, like I said earlier, you see this has passed through history, and people have been born, played a part, died, more born, next generation, played their part, died. And when I looked at this a long, long time ago, back in the 90s, I thought there has to be a coordinating force that spans this period, that's actually orchestrating all of this, like an organizational field, if you like. And then I started looking at ancient accounts and ancient legends, which will bring me into what you said about ayahuasca, because I did that in the Brazilian rainforest in 2003, and I had most extraordinary experience. And you find common themes. Not just common themes between ancient cultures, but common themes between religions and ancient cultures that are not overtly religious in the bricks and mortar religion way. So the common theme, there were many, but this is one of them, that there is a negative force that is manipulating human society from the hidden. That is a common theme, staggeringly. And they call this hidden force different names in different cultures and different religions. And so people don't tend to look at the common themes. They look at the names, or they say this god, they say these gods, they say these gods. Don't look at how they describe them. Yeah. And let's see if there's any common themes here. And there are. So if you look at Christianity, it talks about the devil, Satan. It talks about demons. Then you look at the Gnostics that are not the same type of Christianity, in fact, very different in many ways, that have left documents over the years, like a phenomenal treasure trove of them found in an earthen jar in Nagamadi, 75, 80 miles north of Luxor in Egypt in 1945. And a fifth of those writings, which are quite considerable, talk about a negative force manipulating human society from the hidden, which they call Yaldabaoth, which is their version of the devil Satan, and archons, which is a Greek name for rulers, which are their version of the demons. And then you look at other religions and cultures, and the same theme is there. Like the Islamic culture, they talk about the jinn manipulating from the hidden. I was in a New York taxi being taken from New York airport into the city one time when I was researching this whole Gnostic archons thing. And the guy, he was a Muslim taxi driver, and he said to me, "Well, what are you doing?" I went over the chat, and he said, "What are you doing now?" I said, "Well, I'm working on this." And I talked about the Gnostic version of the archons and what they said about them. And he said, "Well, that's the jinn," right? So these things come together. And then I came across a Native American version of it called Wetiko. And Wetiko is described as a mind virus, which is a negative force manipulating human society through human perception.
And interesting, in Tibet, they have the same idea that there are these sort of demonic entities that possess you in the form of your desires or your attachments. It's kind of like the same thing. It's like this little, it's a possession in the form of a craving.
And so I looked at all this and I saw the common themes in it. And as my kind of research and stuff developed, it was clear that, you can talk about humans' behavior, you can talk about extraterrestrial behavior, but in the end, the behavior comes from consciousness. It comes from perception. My perception of life will get me to behave in a certain way. Bill Gates's perception of life will get him to behave in a very different way. Wow. This extraterrestrial will be benevolent to humans. This extraterrestrial will be malevolent to humans because of their perception. So in the end, it all comes down to consciousness. Now, how about we're looking in terms of the malevolence at the same consciousness that it's called Wetiko and demons or archons, whatever, it's the same consciousness. And it's a low vibrational consciousness that operates within the frequency band of what I call low vibrational emotion. Fear is its major state. Anxiety, hatred, conflict, anything like that. These low vibrational emotional states, depression. And because it's operating in this frequency band, I'll call it Wetiko to pick out a name. That's what I call it in Perceptions of a Renegade Mind. For it to influence you, you have to fall to its frequency band. So because this is the driving force, this is the controlling force of your Gateses and your Faucis and your Klaus Schwabs and all these people, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and what have you, who have been used to construct society as it is. The idea has been to construct a society, and the shamans around the world talk about this, that generates maximum fear, maximum anxiety, maximum depression, and maximally pulls people's consciousness into these low vibrational states. Because at that point, an attachment can take place. If you are full of love and joy, then you are operating at a higher frequency, and Wetiko can't get you.
Yeah,
can't get you.
Wow. Yeah.
You get pulled into these low frequency vibrational states.
They're dependent vibrational states like depression, anger. They're all dependent on something. Love is when you're really in love. When you're in love with just life itself, it's not dependent on anything. You see everything through that lens. So it's harder to fall into a pattern of depression or hate because you're seeing through a lens of compassion and through acceptance rather than something that's dependent on something, which would be like able to attach to you.
Exactly. So now you look at human society, especially they've upped the ante in the COVID era. Oh, yeah. And it's all based on and this is one of the things that's coming. They are going to throw everything at us. They're going to throw energy shortages, food shortages. They're going to throw internet outages, etc. They're going to do everything they can to put us in a state of fear and anxiety because they want to pull us into these low frequency states. So, for instance, I have this concept of Wetiko fighting Wetiko. And there's loads of examples of this. I call it the Wetiko circuit. You are acting in a way that expresses Wetiko, for instance, in a fascist, psychopathic way. And you respond to that psychopathic, fascist imposition with anger, with hatred, with violence. That's Wetiko fighting Wetiko. If we're going to break this circuit, then we've got to come at this from a completely different angle and stay calm and not fall into hatred and not fall into fighting the enemy. What you fight, you become. I've been saying that for decades. And the way out of this is the power of no. You don't have to scream no. You don't have to hit someone and say no. You just have to say no and mean it. No, I'm not doing it. I'm not cooperating with my own enslavement. Because, if you go up this pyramid to the inner core of the cult, certainly in the human world, you're looking at a handful of people compared with the global population. A handful, you probably get them in one room. And yet, that few are dictating human society, and this is how they do it. It's very simple, and this is why the power of no is how we break the circuit. At the top of the pyramid, globally, that happens in every country as well, because every country has its subsidiary networks of the global cult, and their job is to impose the will of the globally centralized agenda in their particular country. This is why in the COVID era, all these countries have reacted the same, centrally coordinated. So at the top of the pyramid, you've got these few, you probably, like I say, get them in a single room. And they decide where they want to take the world. And they impose that agenda on the level below them, which will still be a level of the cult, in awareness of the cult. And they will impose that will upon the level below them. The first level acquiesces to the few and imposes on the next level, which acquiesces to that and imposes on the next level. Now, pretty soon after you come down this pyramid, you're meeting levels of that global hierarchy and the national hierarchy. You have no idea there is a cult. There is a group of people in a room. But the same process continues. It's imposition of that level on that level, the acquisition of that level to that level, and the imposition of that level on that level. And so it goes on. Imposition, acquiescence, imposition, acquiescence. And then you come to the mass of the population, symbolically the bottom of the pyramid. And if we complete the circuit by acquiescing to that level of the pyramid imposing on us, like governments and law enforcement, then we complete a circuit between those few people in that room and the entirety of the global population, but simply through levels that perceive themselves to be below the level above, acquiescing. And if at some point anywhere in that pyramid, it might as well be us, it's only going to be us really, says, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah. I'm not doing that. No, we're not doing that. That circuit is broken. Because, you look at 8 billion people getting on for anyway, and then you look at the numbers, take the inner core of the cult, take the further out level of the cult that know less but know a lot, and then take all the law enforcement and all the military in the world that are overwhelmingly clueless who their real masters are, who impose the will of their masters without knowing that they think their master's the bloody president, the bloody judge. And you add all those together, and it's still a tiny fraction of the 8 billion. And if you look through human history, not least because of what we've been talking about, the continuation of the same basic process through history. I mean, it's changed in its emphasis and it's changed in its way of selling it, but it's been basically the same process. The many, no matter what culture it is, it doesn't matter what religion it is, it doesn't matter what era it is, the many give their power to the few, who, as a result, impose their will on the few or on the many. That's happened all the way through human history, and all that's happened in the COVID era is it's become more obvious as things have got more and more extreme. But that's been the process all along. There's no way that Genghis Khan or Joseph Stalin or any of these people could have done what they did without the acquiescence of the people. No way Hitler and the Nazis could have done it without the acquiescence of the people. Acquiescence in two ways. One, supporting them because they bought the lie, and two, intimidation into obedience because they fear the consequences of not being obedient. If you look at the population of China today, I mean, it's unbelievable, massive.
Yeah, it's huge.
If that said no in any kind of unison to these prats in the government, in the communist government, we'd see actually all along has had no power.
Yeah.
Because you can send your military out, okay, but hold on a minute. Have you seen the military compared with the population?
It's not even close.
No way. So what they do is they divide and rule the population. They intimidate the population because they have to divide and rule.
Divide and conquer.
Otherwise, any form of unity, and it's over.
Yeah. Wow.
This is why you've got BLM, funded by the billionaires, funded by the cult.
And it's brilliant because on the surface, it's a beautiful message. You know, historically, Black people in the U.S. have had have felt, disconnected and disrepresented. And then they say, well, Black Lives Matter. You get everyone to agree with it.
Yeah, it's easy to agree with that. Like, of course.
Because of course. Yeah, exactly. But
that's the psychological trick.
Exactly, yeah, it's a psychological war.
It's all psychological. It's all psychological.
And then George Soros runs it.
Yeah, exactly. When there's billions of people and you're a few, until you get AI connected to them and they become a hive mind,
oh God,
you have got to manipulate their perception, and you've got to divide and rule them. So they're fighting among themselves, and they're therefore not aware of you.
Fighting you,
because you cannot physically control 8 billion people. You can't physically control 330 million plus all those we don't know about in America, because there's not enough of you. So you have to control their perception, which dictates their behavior to suit your agenda.
Populate them.
Yeah, that's another way of doing it. So they have created Black Lives Matter. Use this phrase that no one can argue with, Black Lives Matter, but you know it's a scam. You know the goal it claims to have is not true. When all lives matter becomes a racist statement.
Yeah,
you know it's a scam then.
Yeah.
And so all this money's been put in to create racial division. And if you look at the black on black crime in America not least through gangs like in Chicago, and you look at all the things that have happened in terms of black people and black communities. Well, BLM is not really addressing those in any way, shape, or form. It's not what's best for black people at all. It's how do we use black people in this divide and rule agenda, which you quite rightly say again is massively funded by Soros. And this is a very, very important area because, and it's something I bang on about all the time. Where are you focusing your self-identity? Because your ultimate self-identity, not your current experience, your ultimate self-identity. Because what the cult wants you to do is to self-identify with the labels of a human life.
Yeah.
So it wants you to say, exactly. I'm black, I'm white, I'm this religion, I'm this race, I'm this income bracket, I'm this sexuality now. They want you to identify your experience as a human, which is very, very brief.
Which is an easy hijackable part of who we are because of our tribal past.
Because what they want, this goes back to your multidimensional angle to all this. What they want is to isolate human perception in the five senses overwhelmingly. And the five senses are that level of our consciousness, awareness, that directly interacts with this reality, which is only a very tiny, ridiculously tiny band of frequency. Because what they don't want is for your human mind, to your experiential human mind, to be influenced by the expanded levels of consciousness that are also you. They want to disconnect you from that.
Yeah.
Because once you expand your awareness out of the five senses, you start to see how things fit together. You start to see through the lies, because you are tapping into a level of your conscious manipulation. It's like a battle's going on in the valley.
Yeah.
That expanded level of consciousness, you're on the hill and you're seeing out what the hell's going on from that perspective, whereas the five senses are only in the valley fighting the next person that comes up to them. So if you look at the way society is structured, it's all about the five senses, and it's all about focusing people on the five senses and not letting them see that they're actually much greater than that.
Yeah, it's sort of like extracting people's power and casting this linguistic hallucination in the form of culture over them. So they take on this identity, and then through that given identity, they're powerless. You don't know who you are if you're forced with these identities. So ultimately, we need a spiritual realization. We need a spiritual revolution to go inward, and so that we can realize that these temporary cultural identities aren't us. They're just these sort of just thoughts. They're thoughts that we overly identify with that keep us in these lower vibrational states that you were talking about, that make things easily more like attachable to us. Because if you know who you are, you know who you are. You don't need anything because you know who you are. But if you don't know who you are, then it's very easy to be manipulated.
Yeah, if you look at it from cradle to grave, we're told who we are.
Exactly.
That's what happened.
And our parents were told who they were, and our grandparents were told who they were.
This is who you are. This is who you are. This is what success is, and all these things. I was born in England, so I'm called English, but I don't self-identify the I, the true I, the ultimate I, with being English. That's my experience. I'm consciousness, and my consciousness at the end of this cycle of the body has a cycle, we have eternity, will leave and carry on experiencing forever. This is just a brief experience called human. And what is human? It is simply the way the body decoding system, the five sense decoding system, massively decodes information. That's what makes us human. Why is an elephant an elephant? Why does an elephant act like an elephant and a duck act like a duck? Because their biological computers, as I call them, their bodies and their decoding systems decode information and reality in a certain way,
which is their operating system.
An operating system. And so what we call human is an operating system that decodes information in a certain way, thus leads to a certain perception and behavior we call human. But when the consciousness leaves the body, it's not human. It's consciousness.
Which is accessible through things like ayahuasca.
Absolutely.
Exactly, because what does ayahuasca do? It overrides the decoding systems of the body. And if you look at the five senses, they decode everything as apart from everything else. So what the five senses can only decode a particular band of frequency. And that frequency relates to what we call form, actually holographic form, but what we call physical form. So you see people, and you see buildings, and you see objects, and you see empty space between them. That's the way the five senses decode reality. And that's all right. It gives us an experience of that. But what it means is that the five senses alone can't connect dots, because all they can see is dots, and the dots apart from all the other dots.
Right.
When you go into expanded states of awareness beyond the five senses, and anyone could do it, it's only a choice, then you start to see the unity of everything. So you start to realize that there is no empty space. It's energy consciousness, but on a frequency level that the five senses can't decode. So it appears to the five senses there is empty space. It's actually a field of consciousness, a field of possibility and probability that we're interacting with. And what possibilities and probabilities we connect with and pull into an experience is decided by our perception. Now, this cult, which is hoarding all this knowledge and making sure the public overwhelmingly don't get it, knows this. So it knows that if it can control your perception, and therefore your frequency, because what perceptions are frequencies, like emotions and thoughts are frequencies, it will dictate the frequency band with which you interact with this field of possibility and probability in a feedback loop. So, for instance, if you've got a perception that you're little me and have no power, and nothing ever happens to you because you're just got no power, you've got nothing to give.
Whole universe was random, anyways.
That's your perception. So that's the frequency you're operating on. That's the frequency with which you are interacting with the field of possibility and probability. So you will manifest as an experience what is in that band of frequency, and that band of frequency relates to your perceptual frequency. So unless you change this I'm little me, I have no power, you will go on living in little me, I have no power life, not because it's necessary, but because you believe it is. This is how your belief becomes your experience. And if you look at the way that the real deep manipulation goes, it's to manipulate perception, because they know that will actually manifest as behavior.
Nice.
So the more you can convince the target population that they are powerless, the more they will manifest powerlessness from their belief in their powerlessness. It's a feedback loop, and so they know, and this is the bottom line of the whole cult manipulation. They have to control perception, and then they control the world, because perception becomes behavior, and collective behavior, collective perception, is what we call human society. Why throughout history have these peoples of different kinds acted in such monumentally evil ways? Because once you attach massively to Watiko, you become Watiko.
Yeah, you bring it into this realm.
An incredibly distorted, chaotic, inverted state of consciousness. So this is why Satanism is an expression of Watiko. This is why they invert everything. For instance, they invert the cross. They invert the pentagram.
Interesting. Is that why Hitler inverted the swastika?
Yeah, they're all
turning good things into bad.
Inverting life. If you look at the word evil, it's the word live written backwards,
right.
and it is an inversion of life. This is why they're obsessed with death. It's why the Satanists do so many of their rituals in places of death. A world war, like the Second World War, the First World War, massive upheaval and suffering is a collective ritual to them. It's a collective death ritual. The wars are death rituals for Watiko. And because
are they feeding him, you think? Is it like an energetic exchange for this real being that's giving them something?
Well, this is another point. Interesting question. Because of the the distortion, the inversion, the chaotic nature of this Wetiko consciousness, which is why it expresses itself as it does, it cannot connect in to the energy sources, the energy sustenances that balanced, harmonious consciousness can. So it has to create a source of energy, empowerment, energetic empowerment that is operating within the frequency band that it is, so through that connection, it can vampire that energy and absorb that energy. So if you are in a state of love and joy and all these high vibrational states, that energy cannot be absorbed by Wetiko because it's way off its frequency band.
Yeah.
It never the twain shall meet.
Yeah.
So what it's done, which is really symbolized in the Matrix movies by the Morpheus character holding up the battery and saying the machines have turned us into one of these. You know, and you see in the Matrix movie, you have the symbolism of the machines getting their energy from the energy given off by babies, etc. Whenever we think, whenever we feel, we're generating a frequency that relates to what we're giving off, our emotions, our thoughts. And therefore, we are generating collectively, 8 billion people, enormous amounts of energy, second by second by second. And to empower itself, Wetiko has to manipulate. The more that they can manipulate human perception and human emotion into fear, into anxiety, into depression, into all these low vibrational emotions, the more energy we're generating to empower them, which is another reason when I talked about that, that circuit, that Wetiko fighting Wetiko. When Wetiko fights Wetiko, one's fascist, one's anti-fascist, you're both generating energy to empower Wetiko. This is why, we've got to come from an open heart level of reaction to this and a calm level, so that we can bring this down without empowering that which we're trying to challenge. And there is no need to get into a state of violence, into a state of hatred, because all you're doing is empowering that which you want to undermine. And to bring it down, you just immovably say no and don't cooperate with it. And then it can't operate. And also, if you're coming from a sense of self-identity that the I is consciousness, infinite awareness on an infinite journey of experiencing all possibility forever, then you put the human experience into context. It's a brief human experience, and for all of us, it's going to end at some point. And who wants to stay here forever, right? When there's forever to explore. And therefore, for instance, I concluded 30 years ago when this thing started happening to me, I thought, I realized then that we were consciousness and eternal. And I thought, well, I don't know where this is going, but I'm going to go with it, because the worst thing that can happen is that I just bugger up a human life, a human experience. Okay, I can deal with that. So I kind of went for it. And if you perceive the human life to be it, to either be it and all there is, or you are going to be judged by some judgmental God at the end of it, then you put yourself in a perceptual prison, not least in the sense that you fear death. You fear death. Now, if you fear death, you are going to try to extend your life as much as you can. And if you think that doing what you know to be right might lead to your life being curtailed, for instance, then you're very, very likely not to do what you know to be right. You're going to be intimidated by those that threaten you. If you do this, we'll kill you. And my reaction to that is, well, bloody kill me then, because I'm still not doing it.
Right.
Because I'm infinite awareness.
You ever been worried about that? You ever thought they were going to come through before?
No, never. Because there are other forces at work, actually. If you connect with them, they can't do that anyway.
Right.
That's beautiful.
This is the fantastic thing. Once you open up to higher levels of consciousness, and anyone can do it, like I said, it's a choice, then you tap in to levels of awareness that make sure you're okay.